First of all, thank you very much for joining. I know everyone's time is very precious at the moment. Everyone is incredibly busy, but we hope you find it useful. And I think there's some really interesting content coming up. First of all, I'd like to welcome my guests. I have two guests today: Fiona Brown, who is the founder of the Pricing Excellence Hub, and Barry Edney, who is the owner of Burning Issues Consulting. I'll ask them to introduce themselves in a minute, but just before I do that, said it's been recorded, and what we'll do after the session is we'll send a recording out to everyone. So no need to take any notes or any pictures of slides or anything. You'll get that. We'll also be sending you an advanced copy of our white paper on the same topic. We will sort of factor in any discussions or good points that come out from today, and that will be in your inbox in around about a week, and will be online in probably 2 to 3 weeks. So let's get on and look at what we're going to cover today. So welcome to those people who are just joining. I think the counter is still coming up. So my name is John O'Sullivan. I'm the Chief Exec at e-bate, and we will just move on to agenda, and I will ask my guests to quickly introduce themselves. Fiona, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. So as you all know by now, I'm Fiona Brown, the founder and director of the Pricing Excellence Hub. My background is in pricing strategy and management, and particularly in the distribution and manufacturing sectors. I also have some experience in logistics, as in same day, next day, and international. My business focuses on margin maximization, pricing strategy, and pricing operations for medium to large organizations.
Thank you, Fiona. And Barry?
Yeah, thanks, John. Barry Edney, as you know, pricing consultant advisor, speaker at these events like this. I've been invited to a few lately, which is nice, and occasional non-exec director as well. Like Fiona, I advise companies on their pricing and margin optimization. I focus very much on the operational side of pricing. I find that's where the biggest opportunity is for improvement. And I also work with manufacturers and distribution businesses, usually the larger SMEs and the large businesses as well.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for joining today. Let's just have a quick look at the areas we'll cover. So we'll focus on obviously on rebate management and really just sort of digging down into some of the stresses and risks that people are experiencing in the rebates programs, and that's whether they are very stressed because it's just not working for them, or in many cases that we find mildly anxious because they know they could do so much more with what they have. So we'll just explore that a little bit and just hope that maybe some of the people listening might identify some of the things that are common with them and in their organizations. We'll spend a few minutes just talking about how it affects and how the performance of a rebate management program affects colleagues and stakeholders, both inside and outside the business. And of course, once you realize those stresses are taking place and you decide to think about making a change, how do you assess that? What's the return on investment that you should be looking for from any new project or any new activity in a company? It's just sort of adding something to the workload. So everything has to be really carefully assessed now about how well it's going to perform, how easy it's going to implement. So we'll just talk about that for a few minutes. We'll talk about the power of digital transformation, because as always, it's one of the big levers that you can pull in making that change. A couple of tips on how you can practically tackle the problem. And then if we have time at the end, we'll finish with a Q&A. You'll see there's a Q&A box in the navigation about it right in the middle of it. So if you've got questions we run through, please take a look at please go in there, add your question. Hannah will monitor them, and we'll do two things. We will either try and cover them at the end, or if we don't have time to cover them, we'll come back to you with an answer separately to that. So let's just move on and talk very quickly about rebates in generality. I mean, they're an intrinsic part of the sort of whole commercial supply chain process. They work across manufacturers, distributors, retailers, across a whole host of sectors. whether that is in retail, whether it is in automotive, in heating, in construction, pharmaceutical, huge area. And in many of those sectors, it's a real important contributor to maximizing margins and to optimizing sales. I mean, what we know right now is that there are, about $800 billion worth of rebates transacted in just 3 major sectors. And the reports have said that in the distributor element of the supply chain, that rebates are the driver of net profit. So if you've got something like rebates that is such an important contributor to net profit, then it has to be something that has the attention of all the key stakeholders in the business. Today, what we're going to do is really focus on offering rebates and working with customers on incentivizing them through the use of rebates. But some of the things that we're going to talk about, I think, are relevant right across whether you are offering rebates as a business or whether you are attracting rebates through your suppliers or both. So we'll cover both those areas, and hopefully it will be relevant to everybody. Just to set a little bit of context here, I think one of the things that I keep hearing, and one of the things that I think everyone on the webinar today will be experiencing, is that we're under real significant pressure commercially now on pricing and margins. And Fiona and Barry will talk a little bit more about this in a couple of minutes. Someone said to me yesterday in a meeting that they didn't feel that in the business environment had been so tough since the 2008-2009 financial crisis. And he was just talking about the difficulty in really trying to maintain the level and growth of your business, trying to protect your margins, trying to protect the teams that are working for you. And so I think within that, there is a huge amount of unpredictability and risk. There's a lot of risk around, trying to manage your end user pricing, trying to look for everything within your business that can give you an edge and help you to protect your margins. And I think that's something where, when we're considering that internal plan of what do we do to try and make our business better, what we particularly found in between the lockdowns during the pandemic, is that in a business that I was in at the time, we saw 2 types of business. We saw businesses we were working with who were living day to day. They were just getting through. They were operationally just managing their day-to-day business. And there were those that were learning as they went and said, what do we need to do to change our business as it moves through this pandemic and back into a normalized environment? And it's those companies where they're thinking about planning, they're thinking about small improvements, are the ones that succeed. So let me just bring in Barry here. Barry, from a commercial team point of view, working in this environment right now, where from a supply side that pricing's under pressure, and that things are more competitive than ever, what sort of levers do commercial teams have at their disposal at the moment to try and optimize their business?
Well, we see a lot, particularly in the sectors that I work in. Most of the businesses I work with buy from manufacturers and sell on, so they usually have procurement rebates and sale rebates. And in terms of the selling side, the key is usually targeted pricing. Often they'll end up negotiating a particular deal to achieve the sales, but that can be a bit clunky and a bit impractical. It's negotiate every single transaction, and that's as you said just now, some businesses would have been doing that, managing very tightly every single deal that they made. Bundling, we see a little bit more bundling in B2B now, packaging of products, range of projects to encourage a certain behavior. But I think still the majority are going back to rebates. And rebates, when you think about it, can be a great idea, because in reality, what they are is a conditional discount. I'll only give you this if you demonstrate these buying behaviors. So from a sales point of view, that's great, but you have to be careful of what behavior you encourage and what's the unintended consequences of the behavior you encourage. So if rebates are poorly thought out, and this I'm sure this theme will come up again and again through this conversation, poorly thought out rebates can be counterproductive. So my advice would be to anybody who's trying to think, well, how do I take this forward? How do I optimize? Is take a breath and completely review and rethink your rebates.
Yeah, it's a good recommendation, Barry. And Fiona, I'd imagine you'd echo that. And where do you think rebates fits in that toolbox of options that commercial teams have?
Yeah, so I think sometimes rebates are poorly understood. So from a rebate point of view, there are different ways you can use rebates. So you can use it to incentivize volume, and it encourages large orders, leading to economies of scale and better pricing for the manufacturer. However, you've got to be careful on how you structure that rebate, because you might find cash flow issues that happened right at the end of the term of the rebate, where a big order will come in just so that they can hit the rebate target. So as Barry says, you've got to see what behavior you're encouraging through rebates. You can have performance incentives that can be tied to sales targets and growth metrics, which is probably the better way of doing it. Product mix to promote sales of new products or higher margin products. Channel incentives, so you could use rebates to dictate where you want the product to be sold, whether it's online or whether it's in store. Or then end of life, you can use for end of life to try and clear the products that are reaching the end of life cycle, or a combination of them. So there's lots you can do with rebates. You just, as Barry says, you need to stop and think what behavior you're driving.
And of course, the consequence of all this is it all needs to be managed and monitored and tracked. So, the more complex you make it, the more targeted you can make the behavior, but then of course your admin burden goes up. So it's about what the consequences for yourself are as well as for your sales.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, what both of you sort of talked about there is taking a sort of more strategic and planned approach to rebates as part of that pricing mix and as part of the sort of commercial off that you're doing there. One of the things that we obviously see at e-bate, because we are working with organizations who've recognized the importance of coming to us and saying, okay, how can we fix this, is going back to what I said earlier about the signs of stress that they talk about, how their rebate program is performing, and talk about how it could work better. So, Barry, so what some of the telltale signs that you might see within an organization that would say their rebate program isn't quite what it should be?
Well, the worst scenarios I've seen, simple ones are how much time and resource is going into managing and monitoring rebates, both on the procurement side and the sales side. But really badly is when you see situations where finance haven't accrued the right amount for the rebate when it's due, and that really negatively affects the result at the end of the accounting period. And I've seen that more times than I really care to remember. It's a fundamental schoolboy error, and it happens so often. It should never happen. But finance accrue based on the briefing they're given by sales. They don't get kept up to date when things get changed, or they're not aware of changes, or the rebate agreement is poorly structured. So sales think the rebate is going to be, X, but actually the customer comes back and says, well, actually, we've earned Y, which is 25% more. And that's a nasty shock. So it's usually, and as I said right at the very beginning, as part of my introduction, I work with businesses to help them get the fundamentals right and do them consistently well. And rebates is one of those things that if you don't do the fundamentals well consistently, it can cost you a lot of money. Yeah,
indeed. I was actually laughing with a customer the other week who said, when we joined you, John, our rebates our spreadsheets were working. So he was the head of finance. Our spreadsheets, they're not broken, John. They're actually working. He said that it's just we have dozens of them, and and we're not sure they're right. And it said, and if somebody asks for some analysis, generally we don't have time. And if we do have time, we're not sure that what we give them is correct. So it was, it was something that they'd recognized that.
But apart from that, they were working fine.
They were fine. They're not broken. They're not broken. And once again, it's been able to recognize those signs. So we see in, like, particularly in the finance function, where they spend, that time of stress is where they're spending so much time on the management and admin and remanagement. They don't really have that time to sort of convert that administration effort into a more proactive developmental effort.
No,
so a lot of time wasted there.
And usually, and there's a lot of time back and forth between sales and the customer on confirming what's actually been achieved or not achieved. And again, with procurement or procurement staff, they pull data from the system, and then they want to go and check it with the procurement team. Is this right? Do I understand this correctly? So all that is time consuming.
Yeah.
And it's and obviously that's where all those interactions between all those different people, that's where the errors can crop up.
Yeah. And Fiona, you've seen that as well in many places, particularly with some of the frontline teams and frustrations they have.
Yeah, so I can just draw on some experience of looking at a rebate agreement that we had with a manufacturer, and the complexity of that Excel spreadsheet. You dump data in, and then it does all sorts of things, and you don't know if you're getting paid right or if you're not getting paid right. So complexity is a huge problem. Some rebate structures are really complex, but if nobody understands it, then sales can't push that to the customer, and the customer doesn't know what's going on. And then at the end of the day, you get disputes more than anything else. And then from that point, if you've got something really complex, or the bar is too high, there's too many, so your customer needs to be a certain size before they qualify for a rebate, it reduces the motivation, of your sales staff. Then it's unfair, and it impacts on their commissions and so on. So that's an issue. Also, the inaccurate sales forecasting. Again, if you think about an Excel spreadsheet that works really well, you dump in the data and it gives you the answer. Is it the right answer? Who's going to analyze that answer, and who understands what? Because look, salespeople are supposed to sell the products. They're not supposed to analyze data sheets. So yeah, and then the ultimate problem is your customer relationships that could be strained because you're getting it wrong.
Yeah, and that's often I think underestimated. With if you're making the wrong level of payments, or as Barry said, there is a misunderstanding about what the rebate structure is, and if it is complex, then that misunderstanding can very easily happen. And once again, that's another sign of stress that's coming back, where there is sort of it's more opinion than it is fact, and it's not tracked, and it's not really well understood.
Yeah. And the last thing you want is your customer relationship to be strained. Customers are important to everybody, and so the understanding of the rebates need to be on point. And so complex rebates, although it's really good, if you can't manage it, then it's not.
No, exactly. If there's a way of delivering the data transparently, so that the customer can understand what their target is, what the results of their purchases so far are, in a timely manner, then complexity is fine. But as you say, if the complexity just makes it difficult to manage for you and for the client, for the customer, then that's wasting everybody's time.
Yeah,
it's I think one of the things that you are both describing there is a program, unlike some activities in the business, rebate sort of affects every part of the organization, doesn't it? So you've got a finance team that's struggling to manage it, particularly when there's complexity and changes. Being able to put frequent changes and the correction of frequent errors into a complex spreadsheet is not an easy thing to do, because often that then goes wrong. Oh, sorry about that. My Teams just tried to start up in front of the screen. So so it's affecting pretty much everyone in the organization. Barry, just to pick up on that for 1 second, you talked about, and I was going to pick this up later, but let's talk about it now. When we talked a few weeks ago, we talked about this collaboration that's required between sales and procurement when they're selling product through the business. Do you, given that it's affecting so many, there's a particular sort of connection there that needs to be made, that's illustrative of how the process works right the way through the supply chain?
Yeah, well, it's how it should work, really. I mean, I'm a big advocate of collaboration across the business anyway, whether it's in terms of sales or procurement. So many data points across the business you need to reference. So procurement can't do their job properly unless they have good demand forecasts, good demand plans. Product marketing can't do a terrific job of setting pricing if they don't know what the likely demand is and what the procurement costs are. So they're stuck in the middle of that. So there's a collaboration needed there. In terms of rebates, particularly if a business is relying heavily on the purchase rebates to achieve their gross margin or their profit, then it's critical that they're targeting the right sales mix. And if a purchaser procurement team haven't got insight as to where they are progress to their rebate targets, how can they inform sales to say, hey, we need to stop selling this and sell that so we can reach our target? Or we're nearly at the target for product A, stop, back off on product B and focus on product A so we can hit that target and improve our margins. And if you're not collaborating, then how would they know that?
Yeah. And that's all underpinned by having the data in one place, and having the thing we love, that single source of truth.
Yes, that rare beast.
It's not my data versus your data. It is the data, which in my experience in rebates, we had a fabulous rebate program that it took us about 4 to 5 years to develop what was a very sort of forgotten rebate program. But one of the first tasks we realized was that everybody had their own little spreadsheet, and how we agreed the single source of truth and where that truth was stored.
Which is the single source?
Was one of the big tasks, and I think that's something that is a basic building block. So to both of you really, maybe Barry could kick off. What we see is that we hear time and time again that rebates are important, that we use them, that they're managed on spreadsheets, it's going back and forwards to be financed. If it's such an opportunity and can be such an issue, why isn't it being tackled? What do you think, Barry, the barriers in the business that stops a team from saying let's improve this?
I think there's two key things here. One is everybody's up to here in their day job, managing rebates, managing sales, trying to get things on the bottom line. And the other thing is, there's in any business, there's very rarely one or more, very one person who knows what really good rebate management looks like, who can say, we're not doing this well enough. There's a lot of people think, I'm sure we could do this better, but I haven't got time to look at it now. And that's the problem. And that's really where people like myself and Fiona and obviously the e-bate team come in. If they recognize that problem and they talk to us, we can say, well, we've seen it done better here and there, and here's an example, and why don't you look at this and why don't you look at that? We can give that advice. And rarely do you find a team, a business where they've got somebody who can take a step back, take a breath and think, hang on, there must be a better way.
Yeah. And I think it's really, where does that come from when it's such a cross-functional activity? Where's the ownership lay? I mean, with e-bate, many of our initial contacts come from finance, and interestingly, one of our new customers said to me a while ago, what it used to be in the business, John, is finance was administration and trading was income, and we were in two very strong silos from that perspective.
That's common as well.
Where this has come from is collaboration. We've had a deliberate move to be more collaborative, break down silos, look at how we can improve the business as a whole, as one team. It's where their rebate initiative came from. You see the same, Fiona?
Yeah, like sales would initiate the rebate and then put it on Salesforce or somewhere and say there's a rebate there, and then at the end of the term they'd contact finance and say my customer's the rebate is due, can you pay it? And there's no there's no communication, collaboration. It's just and so you don't know if there's an Excel spreadsheet somewhere with a that's linked into Salesforce, how that's actually affecting the profitability of that customer, because that customer might be getting high discounts as well, and so you don't see the net. So
actually, it's interesting you say that.
An issue at the end of the rebate term, but yeah, who's looking after it?
It's interesting you say that, Fiona. I mean, I've come across a couple of examples where the pricing team weren't aware of what I would call the pocket margin. And one of the reasons I focus on what I call pricing operations is there are more leaks to margin in that margin waterfall than most people realize. And that's where it all goes. Things like that. I once helped a company. They had 3 or 4 levels of rebate, and each team in the business allocating their share of the rebate wasn't aware of the other 2. There was 3 levels of rebate: global, regional, and country. And the country team didn't know about the rest. Global team didn't know about region and country, and region weren't aware of global and country, because they're talking with the regional headquarters of, or the global or the local headquarters of these different companies, and they're giving it away 3 times. Customer just saying, "Oh, thank you very much, we'll have that."
So what's your net selling price? You have no idea.
No. Who knows what I would call the pocket price is? Your net.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things you've touched on there is really, I mean, one of the topics of this webinar is just that, what is the cost of that? What's the return on investment that you might attract from tackling it? And we often find that there's 4 or 5 areas that come together when particularly when you talk about that margin leakage. Back to the conversation the point I made earlier about dozens of spreadsheets. There's some really famous research that everyone uses, which there is minimum of 1% human error in every Excel spreadsheet. And when you build that up and you reflect some of the things that both of you have said, when you start to then say, okay, you add sort of multiple connected spreadsheets, you add multiple products, multiple customers, multiple countries, you can then very easily see that 1% grow into 2% or more. And with an organization we're talking to at the moment who are running their rebates on spreadsheets and have a $35 million program, then a 2% error rate can be very expensive.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I've written about this before, and in fact, I posted about it on LinkedIn today. Some years ago, I because of all the points we've made about Excel, there's these errors, there's multiple sources of the truth, there's multiple versions. Everybody who has to put input into that Excel sheet will have a better idea how to structure that particular formula or display that particular result. And so they make changes, and version control's a nightmare. And there's an old saying about lies, damn lies, and statistics. Well, I prefer to think of lies, damn lies, and spreadsheets. Because you never know what version you're getting and who controlled it and who changed it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you don't have one source of truth in the data, when you are running that data and you
exactly.
People don't agree on who gets what, and
every meeting starts with an argument about which number's right rather than about resolving the issue.
Absolutely. So there's that sort of accuracy issue, and the value that's sort of hidden in some ways in improving that. And the second thing that we often find is people talking about how much time they haven't spent just manually processing it, and if they could find a better way of doing it, whether they could take 50-75% of that cost away, and whether that is one of the customers I spoke about earlier had 5 people running their rebate accounting and said we're targeting within 12 months is we can reallocate 2 of those people. And they saw that as a cost saving, but what they said is we have a lot more to do in terms of improving the business, but all we're doing is administering the business. So that's where they were breaking down the silo and trying to do that. So if you think about, taking out 50% of that cost, then that's another contributor to that benefit. And then I think it then starts to come down to, the errors that you're then pushing out into the market. So, are you missing claims from your suppliers? And we know that people, instead of switching purchasing and procurement into an area that might be, for example, approaching a tier where there's a payment due, they leave it spread across 3 or 4 suppliers and not recognise that there's a particular payment here. Or, as I think you said, Barry, they're spreading their rebate dollars across the wrong mix of customers. I think as soon as you start to get that, I think you start to not just think, how can I get benefit from improving accuracy, saving time, but it's actually the benefit you gain from an improved rebate program strategically. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just want to add to that, the proactive nature and that collaboration can be really beneficial. I mean, a few years ago, most businesses, most procurement teams, if they were near a rebate target, they'd make the extra purchases, put the inventory in stock, and it wouldn't be a problem. The cost of capital now so much higher. They're under pressure to keep their inventory low, so they can't and won't make that purchase to achieve that procurement target unless they know they can sell it. So that's why you need that collaboration with sales to say, hey, let's move the customers onto more of this so that we can meet that target and not have it in stock.
Yeah. Fiona?
One thought came to mind when you were saying about the administration of all these, 5 people. My philosophy was always computers should do computer work and people should do people work. So if there's something that you could click a button and then it does what it needs to do, then that's the point, really. You don't need loads of people to do what a computer can do, what software can do.
Yeah, an interesting point, Fiona. I think that sort of moves us on. I think the just to sort of share my screen for a minute and something that we will send out to everybody. Hang on. The areas that we see being sort of most areas, just in summary, is we went through administration savings, the reduced errors, the improved accuracy, the whole program improvement, but also, when you've got so many organizations running through a sort of digital transformation, it's, are you still running it in a very old-fashioned way when the people either side of you are managing it in much more intelligent ways? So how are you disadvantaged with your, either your manufacturer partners or your retail partners? And indeed, the company is doing the same thing as competitors with the same suppliers and customers. So, are you at a disadvantage in doing that? Fiona, one of the things when we very first spoke, one of the things you talked about was how automation can sort of transform this area. Do you want to comment on that for a couple of minutes?
So yes, from first-hand experience, automation is key to keeping your human cost down. The more you do with rebates and strategies, and the more you grow, the more people you need to do things in Excel, and automation is absolutely key. If you are not thinking about automation now, why not? Because you're going to have competitors, young millennials, maybe the Gen Zs coming in, starting companies, and they're going to do everything so much quicker and faster. So yeah, automation is absolutely vital for every business to think about when it comes to manual processes, especially Excel manual processes, because Excel's great. Let's face it, there's some things that you can do in Excel, but you don't need a whole team of 8-10 people to do things that software can just do for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the lovely things that you see when, whether it's, and we've seen it in rebates, but I've seen it in many areas. You'll see from the wrinkles on my skin, I've been around for a long time. And you've seen as technology has sort of crept into more and more elements of business process, you can just see how that brings things to life. So, when you do have that single source of truth, that one source of truth, hopefully that you can get to, and you have that data in place, what people then do is they start moving from, opinion and a view to making decisions based on their experience, their strategy, their view, and the data, making it on the data. And you start to see that the questions being asked, why can't we do this? They start to understand the insights that they can get from good data, and then start making better business decisions, which we all want to do. Barry, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it just comes back to that point about collaboration again, and open up the black box and making it transparent. But to do that, you need one source of data that you all agree on, to your point. But on that collaboration, if you've got that one source of data that's up to date and current, you can have those discussions. And just in terms of a point that Fiona made earlier on, with rebates, you have to have a clear goal, and what is it you want that rebate to achieve? What buying behavior do you want to encourage in your customers? Well, think how much better it would be if you could actually agree what buying behavior you wanted with the procurement guys, so they could optimize the purchases that go into that, and actually perhaps get together when you decide what buying behavior you want to encourage, what's best for the business, what's best for your business, and you're rewarding that behavior in the customers.
Yeah. I was at the International Food Exhibition in Excel Centre a couple of weeks ago, and one national sales manager, I was talking to him about rebates, and he sort of said, "Yeah, absolutely, we use rebates. They're massively effective for us. My whole team used them," and he was very, very excited about it when we spoke about it. However, I then said, "So, which of your customers do you offer rebates to?" And he said, "We have a floor of £200,000 a year spent with the company. Anything above 200,000, then we can offer one of our rebate structures to them." And I sort of asked him, why 200,000? What's that base? And he just said, "Oh, John, it's an accounting nightmare. So, if we take it down below that ceiling, which then brings a lot more accounts in, then we have more issues with finance. We have
a lot more admin." Yeah.
Yeah. So for him, it wasn't our rebates. Our rebates are effective when it hits 200,000. It was the operational headache stops him from coming down below that floor.
Well, coming back to Fiona's point, if you've automated the system, you've got a system that does a lot of that for you, then of course you can then start capturing those business opportunities that are actually not worth the effort because of the admin burden, if you've got an automated system.
Yeah.
And the point to that is also your long tail of smaller customers has got huge opportunity in there. Or I think most businesses have a long tail of the smaller customers who get ignored, and there's opportunity in those.
And are they small customers because they're small customers, or they small customers for you because you only have a small share of their wallet?
Yeah.
I once was working with a client, and I can't name them, but they were actually a Belgian-based company. But I was telling them about their rebates. Their rebates, I did a rebate analysis, and their rebates have progressively been increased by 0.5% a year for about 6 or 7 years. So why is this happening? Why is this growing? And I asked them how they set their rebate targets, and it's a small increase every year. It's a slightly higher value target than the prior year. So in a high inflationary market, of course, they're actually rewarding them for buying less, which doesn't make sense. But hey, so I suggested they be more strategic. An example I gave where you could find out how much they spend overall and target a share of wallet. But how will we know how much they spend? Well, you could ask them. And it comes back to good old-fashioned account management. They were afraid to ask those questions and have those strategic discussions with the clients. And if the customer's not prepared to have that discussion, then they're not really a strategic partner with you. And should you be offering them a rebate, and should you just not be negotiating deal by deal?
Yeah, indeed. So taking it all into account, I think the the thing that everyone always asks then is, so how do I tackle it? How do I get this? How do I make a change in this business? And in fact, one of the questions we had, let me just bring this one up first. So thank you whoever added this. The question was, considering rebates is a key business process, which functional role, in your opinion, should be the business process owner?
Oh, that's a good one. Fiona doesn't look keen to go first, so perhaps I will. Yeah, I think, I mean, it's almost the same question as who owns pricing, and that's usually them. But I think it needs to have one accountable person. Somebody has to own the process, and as it's mainly a finance process, I think the ownership of the process stays in finance. But rarely do I ever see a clearly defined rebate management process, either procurement or sales. With a structure of, this is the accountable person who's going to take care of it. This other person is going to do X task, and this other person is going to do Y task, and this is a RACI that supports the actual entire process. And that's missing, and that encourages the collaboration. You actually have a team of cross-functional players who are the rebate team.
Yeah, and that's important to just create the rebate team. So the finance process, sorry, the rebate process, you think is a finance process. Would you agree, Fiona?
Yeah, I think Barry's absolutely spot on. The actual process and managing what gets paid out and always has to be with finance. But if you think of a pricing team, as Barry famously says, is a team sport. They touch all areas of the business. So pricing could manage the collaboration, because they're already in collaboration with everybody. They could manage the
or they should be.
Yeah. Yeah, there's an analytics team that should do analysis, and then a pricing team that should do the commercials, or also have analytics with them. But that's how I would do it.
Yeah. Definitely you need people from pricing, from product management, from procurement, from sales in that team. Otherwise it just won't work.
Yeah, absolutely. So that really sort of covers the end-to-end in the business. And going back to a point that you made earlier, Barry, about everyone sort of having work up to here and their day jobs taking up so much time, how important is it to have somebody in a senior role championing a change like this?
Oh, I think it's essential. I mean, so many companies I talk to, and I talk to senior pricing people and people with the title of head of pricing or pricing manager. And when I talk to them about their day job, they're really only very senior analysts managing other analysts. They're reporting on what's happened, not what could be done better, and not able to take that strategic view simply because they're so busy with all the Excel sheets they have to manage, and the reports they have to feed back to different parts of the business. So getting that executive buy-in to say, yeah, we're either going to bring in somebody interim, a consultant like Fiona or myself to help us for that short interim period, or we're going to allow this pricing manager to step away from the day-to-day and take a strategic approach of this and get it on. Without that executive support, it's not going to happen, because you'll be sunk under all this day-to-day activity.
Yeah, just to add to that, Barry, is if you look at the management of rebates, finance does some, sales does some, the commercial might be involved in some, and so on. Because it's so spread across different business functions, there's not one board member decision maker in charge of it. So it is important to get a champion, a board member champion, who will then understand that all these bits and pieces of small issues that everybody is having with rebates actually comes together to one big problem that needs to be addressed. So I think if everybody's little issues with a rebate process is quantified, so that you can see what the ROI would be if you automated the process, that's what you need to do.
Excellent.
Indeed.
So sorry, Barry, carry on.
I was just agreeing. Fine.
Oh, okay. So in conclusion, there's some interesting points. So having that senior leadership air cover, I think, is important. Fiona, you called it a team sport, that from a pricing point of view, how we need to bring in somebody from each key element. And also, as you said, seeing that there are problems of different sizes, small problems right the way through that process that are affected different people. You need to bring all of those together to understand the whole. And as you said, Barry, then start to quantify that and then start to look at what the benefits are going to be. I think it's fascinating. I think what we might do is take a couple of questions. And I just want to make sure we don't miss out on time. I think what we've covered so far is, where do we think the stress points are? And we looked right the way through, from finance through to commercial, through to customers and suppliers. We've talked about who's been involved. We've touched on all the different elements of the cost of not managing this very well, and we've touched on how this can be improved. A couple of questions that have come through. So once again, thank you everyone for asking. And I'll put this one out to, let me see, who shall I put this one out to? I'll put it up first, and you can put your hand up. So where is rebate contract complexity mainly driven from? Field sales teams drive a lot of the complexity in my experience. Comment. So where does the rebate contract complexity mainly come from?
Oh, I think I should let ladies go first this time. that one. I'll throw that one your way.
I don't know. I might agree that it could be the salespeople that put all sorts of different things in there, but then there could be an analyst somewhere that is really good with Excel and says, well, we could put this in here and that in there and that in there, and then comes up with here's a spreadsheet that could do all of that for you, and you can monitor this and that, and then so you got a complex spreadsheet from an analyst that the salesperson has bought.
Another spreadsheet. Yeah. No, I think you're right. I mean, from my point of view, it needs to be set together as a team, because if the pricing team aren't across what sales are offering, how can they factor it into the discussion we had a little while ago about what's the net? So I think there has to be agreement there on how the rebate's structured. But in terms of the agreements with customers, the contract terms, I think that's a sales admin task. But I have seen rebate agreements that are just a simple email. Oh yeah, we'll do this, this, and this, and if you hit this target, we'll pay out. No formal contract at all. I ended up running a business in Australia some years ago, and inherited some vague rebate agreements. So I put formal contracts in place, and at the end of the first year, one of the bigger customers who had missed their top target, only hit their middle target, claimed the top target. And I said, well, no, the contract's clear. You didn't reach that target, not paying that much. Oh, yeah, but your predecessor always paid it because we're loyal customers. Well, I'm sorry, we're not rewarding loyalty. We're rewarding performance against the target. And in the past, my predecessor had no way of holding them account to that, because he didn't have a formal agreement, just had an exchange of ideas, really. So we almost fell out about it. Many years later, he told me that I was very annoyed with you at the time when you wouldn't pay out, but I do respect the fact you had a clear agreement and you stuck to your guns.
Yeah, that's very good. Do you want to comment on that, Fiona?
Oh, no. Anything else to add? I don't have a clever story like that, no.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I've been around a long time, so I've picked up a lot of them on the way.
I can imagine. So another question is really, when I think just came up when we were talking about transformation and then how you might drive that change in the business. And the question was, well, in fact, there's two questions. I'll read them both out. What do you think the biggest resistance is? The biggest resistance to adoption and to change? And the second one is, why is there such a reluctance to move on from the status quo with spreadsheets?
I think I'm going to jump in here before ahead of Fiona. Sorry, Fiona. My view based on years of bitter experience and scars to prove it, is reluctant to change. That why move away from the status quo? Because it's risky. What happens if you take your eye off the ball on this time-hungry process to do this new thing, and this new thing doesn't work, and then we've let all that fall apart? So the risk factor there, and reluctance to change is doing anything new, anything different. This is complex and it's time-consuming, but I can do it on autopilot. I know what I'm doing. I don't have to think about it. This new thing takes time to set up. Then you've got to learn the new thing and do it the new way. And something a professional change manager said to me many years ago that stuck with me. He said, the thing is, he said, until the pain of doing nothing outweighs the pain of change won't happen.
So repeat that again for people watching. Until
the pain of doing nothing, continuing as you are, until the pain of doing nothing outweighs the pain of change won't happen.
Yeah. And I think you have to understand what that pain of doing nothing is. And once again, it comes back to our quantifying of that problem. A quick comment that came in. Let me just read it. Yeah,
it's exactly right, John. You might want to read that out, but that's because of that collaboration across the business is so important for that very reason. So
yeah, and thank you, Phil, for the comment. Who said that in his experience, the collective reluctance to change is a result of the lack of collective understanding about what's happening. So important to find the process, roles, responsibilities, and I think that sort of goes through for any sort of project or anything you're doing outside of the norm.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and that echoes that very well.
I know Phil, and we have a few shared experiences, so I can absolutely endorse his point there.
Excellent. Let me just pick one more question. Let me pick one out here. Yeah, it was just another one around the approach that an organization should take when they want to make that change. So who puts their hand up first to make the change in your experience?
I can just talk about my experiences. The person with the pain puts their hand up first.
Yes, exactly. It's not normally one, you can never predict it. It's whoever, and sometimes it's not necessarily the most senior person. It's usually with the most pain and the loudest voice.
Yeah, and the one that needs to manage all these people that are managing all these spreadsheets that are also have the pain. So the pain comes usually from the front line, and it will come up the management chain, and so that's how the pain needs to get to senior leadership. Because
one of the challenges is interesting. Some years ago, I came across a survey, and I think from memory, I think it was Pricewaterhouse survey. So a lot of, I suppose, 2/3 US businesses and about a third Europe. And I can't remember the actual questions, but the main point was, of all senior executives that they interviewed, only 20% could explain how their people in their business delivered value to customers. All they knew was that the people did, and effectively the customers were doing the right thing by the company and the customer. So how they did it, nobody knew, and I think that's part of the problem. When everybody just keeps head down, turning out the work, giving the data, producing these Excel sheets, management think, oh, that's not a problem, we'll carry on.
Yeah.
But then, so you do need to report up to say, hey, we're being overloaded here. We can't keep doing this. We'll need a technical solution.
Yeah, excellent. So thank you for that. I think we've only got a couple of minutes left, so I think I will just wrap up. Thank you both for your contribution today. I think it's a big area. We're going to have another webinar at the end of May, where we'll continue this theme. We'll talk more about the sort of practical aspects of making that change and how that happens. So if anyone that's watching in today has any particular questions they'd like us to address in the webinar in a bit more detail, then please just drop me an email. You've got my email address on the line there. I can share any comments with Fiona and Barry as well. So look out for a couple of things over the next few days. So the webinar recording and a couple of slides that we used today will be sent out to everyone who attended. So there's no need to ask. It will automatically come out. We'll, as I said at the beginning, we'll give you early access to our white paper. And I definitely think there's a couple of things that came out today that we'll find featuring in the white paper. Maybe one or two of Barry's stories, maybe one or two of Fiona.
Oh, well, I've got more. Don't worry, I've got more.
Of Fiona's sort of great snippets, like the team sport thing, which I love. And then we'll automatically invite everyone who attended today to our next webinar. So once again, thank you very much for joining. We really appreciate the time that you've spent with us today. I hope you found it useful. And this format where we're just trying to sort of share experiences and just give some direction, I hope has been useful for you. My email address is on the slide there, john.o'sullivan@ebate.net. And if you have any further questions for us, or you'd like to talk about rebates in more general, just drop me a line and I'll come and talk to you. So with that, I would once again thank you again. Thank you, Fiona and Barry, for your time and expertise today. And thanks everyone for joining.